Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for a few minutes here today. Angela and I are here to talk about a broad but a very important topic. We are going to be going through our best pieces of advice for you as you are working on your application to Notre Dame or any other university. And what we're really going to be focusing on is taking a few areas that I think we probably get the most questions about for how can we best present ourselves on an application, best show who we are to admissions counselors such as us who are going to be reading our application. So we're going to introduce ourselves, then we'll jump right into some of these big topics that hopefully will be very helpful to you as you do begin working on that application to the colleges and universities that you're interested in, hopefully including Notre Dame. But my name is Brendan Corsones. I'm an associate director in the admissions office. All of us do cover different territories for the office. We are responsible for working with students that attend high schools in these areas. So the good news for you is that no matter where you're from, no matter where you go to high school, you have a go-to person in the office that is ready and willing to answer your questions and provide you help as you go throughout the process. So I work with students from the greater Indianapolis metro area, as well as students from Brazil, Central America, and several Middle Eastern countries as well. So a little bit about me, very fortunate to be joined by my colleague Angela as well. Let her introduce herself.
Thank you, Brendan. So my name is Angela Betts. I'm an admissions counselor here in the office. And like Brendan said, we all kind of cover our different areas. So I cover the majority of Texas, excluding Houston and the Rio Grande Valley. And I also cover a few countries in Europe and Shanghai out in China. So that's kind of what I'm looking over here in the office. But we're really excited to talk to you about a couple of those different application topics, including our activities list, what might go into there. Maybe what do you do with that section called additional information? What are you going to do about maybe testing? And then wrapping it up today by talking a little bit more about that personal statement.
Absolutely. All really important pieces. And again, we hope that what we share with you today is going to be helpful for you as you work on that application. But starting with where I think we probably do, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say where we probably get the most questions and most students kind of seeking advice would be that activity section, because you can go a lot of different directions in this area. So Angela, what would kind of be just a few just general pieces of advice, a few tips that you would give when working on this section, listing the activities, what students are involved in, would you say?
Absolutely. Yeah. So most importantly, this activity section is your space to tell us all of the things that you're doing outside of the classroom. So when you're not physically sitting at your desk, we want to know what you're up to. And this can be anything from clubs, activities, or maybe even athletics that you're taking part in outside of that classroom. Or it could be community or cultural engagements. So are you taking part in a youth group that's taking up a lot of your time outside of the classroom? Are you doing cultural activities with your family or friends? Maybe you have a part-time job that you're doing, and you really want to tell us about how you are working at X, Y, or Z. Maybe you have a really long commute to school. Whatever that is, your activity section is your space to share those different activities. So for those applying with the Common App or applying Coalition on SCORE, you're going to have about 10 spaces to put all of these different activities in. And really just feel free to share whatever is most exciting to you. Some students might rank these, say, I want to put what I really love the most at the very top. Some students might organize them in different ways. You have the freedom to really express yourself through how you're putting and what you're putting on these lists. And then one of the most commonly asked questions we get with that is, well, what if I don't have 10 things to fill my activities list? Mm-hmm. What do I do? Or what if I have more than 10? Yeah. Do you have any comments on what a student might do if they have, maybe more than 10 things to put on that list?
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly, even if students are kind of in that category where you're not filling up all 10, number one, don't panic. There is no sort of minimum that is needed or maximum, certainly in order to be admitted to Notre Dame, to be admitted to a lot of other great universities. We've certainly seen students put together really strong applications, really strong activity sections, no matter the number. We're a lot more interested in kind of what is the level of engagement that you've taken on with these activities versus a number versus the type of activity that you are going to be involved in, I would say. I also am glad that Angela kind of brought up as well, because I certainly hear quite a bit, well, what should I put first? What does Notre Dame want to see? That you're doing first. And again, there's no sort of kind of hierarchy that it means one activity is better than another, that you're involved in. But I do kind of like to think of it as the activity that you list first. In all likelihood, that's what we're going to read first. We're not really in the way of starting in the middle, then we're working, in different directions from there. So this doesn't necessarily need to be the activity that you dedicate the most time to, or you have the most prominent leadership position. I think it's more about what do you care about the most? What are you most proud of, perhaps, that you've done? What do you want to make sure that Notre Dame sees first when we're reading your applications is kind of a good way to order them. But Angela brought up a good point as well, is that if you do have more than those 10 activities, or if you have something that just doesn't quite fit neatly into one of the areas of the application, whether that's in the activities section, there's an honors and awards section where you can list anything that you've accomplished there. If you have attended like classes at a college or a university, there's a section for that as well too. But if you just kind of want a general catch-all section in order to list something or to list additional activities, or if the word count doesn't fit within the short description box, we do have on the application, there is a general additional information section where you can just list, again, anything else that you really want to make sure we see and we know when we're reviewing your application. So you do have that general section if you do need to expand beyond the 10 activities, go beyond what's in that little box there. You do have that additional information section. That's a great way to list areas that you're just not quite sure where to put them. You can always list it there, and you can be sure that we're going to see that from there as well too.
Absolutely. And if by chance you say, well, I have everything that I want fitting into these other categories, you don't have to put anything at all into that additional information section. The key part of that phrase is it is additional. So if you're thinking, wow, I really love how my application looks, but are they going to expect me to put anything in additional information?
Yeah.
We're not expecting that of you. It's just a resource there if you want it.
Certainly. And I'm glad that Angela brought up a point about the activity section as well too, because you do have a good deal of room within the activities to list a good deal of information about your level of involvement with that activity. You're not just listing the club that you are a part of. You can also list certainly any like formal leadership positions that you've attained. You'll be able to list the number of weeks per year, the number of hours per week that you're involved in that activity. But there's also going to be like a short text box that also can be very helpful for you to use as well too, because just listing a club doesn't always tell us how much are you doing as part of that club, or just giving us a leadership position, because maybe it's not something that has a formal leadership position certainly, but you still want to communicate what impact are you making, did you grow this organization? Did you spearhead some new initiatives as part of that? Or even just telling us a little bit about like, why are you involved in this? Like, why did you really enjoy being part of 4-H in high school, Angela? I know Angela loves 4-H, so that's a good one there. I don't know if Best Show Pig is necessarily a formal leadership title, so you can do that.
I mean.
So you do kind of have that short description box that we would definitely encourage you to use to tell us more about how you were involved with that activity. Can be really important as well, too.
Absolutely. And just something that if you want to take pity on your poor admissions counselors reading your files, be mindful in that section, use your action verbs, share your achievements, and also maybe be a little bit mindful that if there's an abbreviation that you're very used to using, but maybe it's not something that a girl from rural Ohio might know, please feel free to write out what those are in those different descriptions and categories, because there's a lot of acronyms out there, friends. We want to make sure that we can really get to know you in the best way possible. So share everything that you can in that, I believe it's 150 characters explanation. Right, or in those leadership or organization areas.
Absolutely. Wish I could say I was offering the big city perspective, but I'm from rural Vermont, so you're kind of getting similar perspectives there with that one. That's a really good point to make as well too. So I think that's really wonderful, talking about the activity section as well. We also at Notre Dame do, like if you wanted to submit an optional resume, you are able to do that as well too, although I would always kind of think of the resume as very much being a supplement, not a substitute for the activity section. If you do kind of want to expand further, again, beyond activities, additional information section, you can do that on the resume, but never think, that just because necessarily it's on the resume, you really want to make sure those most important pieces are showing up on the activity section as well too. But you can submit additional documents through your applicant status portal through us at Notre Dame as well too.
Absolutely. So that kind of covers all of our different activities and those ways that you can express that. Something else that's really important about the application process is testing.
Yeah.
Brendan, do you want to talk a little bit about just how testing is looked at
Yeah.
here at Notre Dame and ways that students might be evaluated with that.
Yeah, because this is, I think, a pretty hot topic, not only, in Notre Dame, but certainly in the landscape of higher education as well, too, whether a school is test optional, whether they are requiring the standardized test. So that would be like the SAT or the ACT is what we would refer to. So at Notre Dame, we are still going to be test optional for this upcoming admissions cycle. So for students that are applying in fall 2024, you would not be required to submit the SAT or the ACT in order to have a complete application. Now, if you do choose to submit the SAT or the ACT, I did want to define a couple of points. That first off, we do super score for both the SAT and the ACT. So if you do take either exam multiple times, we would take the highest section score from those multiple attempts, combine them to give you a composite score. So if you do take the test again, even if you only improve in one area, that would improve your overall score because we would super score for both of those exams. I should also mention we don't have a preference between the SAT or the ACT. Whatever works best for you is certainly totally fine from us. If you are someone that was very ambitious and took both, we are only going to use the higher score between the two when we are evaluating your application. We do also accept self-reported scores on your application as well. So if you do not want to pay to send in your official test score, we would be able to evaluate your application based on the self-reported scores. I always like to add the caveat that if you are admitted and decide to enroll at Notre Dame, eventually we will need your official score. So as long as you are honest, it is no issue. That is not something that very, very rarely ever comes up, but certainly just give us an accurate self-reported score and we'll use that to make an admissions decision. But something I did also want to note as well is that if you do not have an SAT or an ACT score, there are other ways to kind of demonstrate this preparation, this kind of quantitative evidence on your application as well too. So beyond the SAT or the ACT, you could also be submitting AP exam scores, like submitting perhaps at least 3 AP exam scores, or IBHL exam scores could be helpful for us to know as well if you are enrolled in an IB curriculum. If you are pursuing the IB diploma and have IB predicted grades, that could be more evidence of preparation that we could use as well too. Also looking at it in ways that could be done through like national awards based on sort of standardized testing scores, like a national merit semifinalist, or even in more creative ways like receiving scholastic awards, gold and silver key awards, things like that you could list on the honors and awards section that you may not necessarily think of as kind of falling under this same category, but that could also be evidence of academic preparation as well too that you could have there.
Absolutely. We just kind of the idea of the entire application, because we're doing a comprehensive application review, is we want to get to know you in as many ways as possible. So being able to submit those additional, whether that's telling us about if you've earned a Scholastic Award or about your AP scores, your SAT, your ACT, all of those are really just going to help us get to know you in the most comprehensive way possible.
Absolutely. We've always, treated the testing as it's just being one piece of the puzzle that we are using, and certainly students that may choose not to submit, any of these exam scores, there are still many other data points on your application that we'll be using to still make that very comprehensive, holistic review of your application, both an academic and a non-academic perspective as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you are choosing to submit those, just something to be mindful of, and we'll touch on this a little bit more later, but just be mindful of when you're submitting and when you're taking those tests, so that we can make sure we get those in time for the application reviews. So if you're thinking of applying restrictive early action, you might not be wanting to plan on taking a test in November. Those scores will likely not get to us in time, but...
Very good. Yeah, that's a good way of thinking of it as well too. I think that's good advice for every component of the application, giving yourself plenty of time, but certainly with the testing, because that can be a little bit out of your hands. When is that going to be sent to us? So being mindful of that when you are deciding when to apply, when we may be receiving all this information. It's a very good point. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, let's, I think, move into, I think we're moving from kind of the standardized testing. Let's talk a little bit more about a really important piece of the application for how we get to know more about you, which is the personal statement on the application itself. I may toss it over to you, Angela, to talk a little bit about how you think the best approach to that would be.
Amazing. Thank you, Brendan. So personal statement, this is going to be your largest essay that you're submitting in your application. The Common App, and if you apply Coalition on Score, both of these have kind of the opportunity to write on a big prompt. If you're applying with the QuestBridge application, they usually have 2 different personal statements or larger essays of sort that they're going to encourage you to fill out. But these are all going to be ways for you to express who you are. Now, your personal statement is really your time, and I'm going to say that phrase again, to express who you are. There is no magic formula. There is no right or wrong answer into writing this essay. It's really your chance to just tell us what is important to you. What, stories do you want to tell? What things do you want to highlight? Maybe this will be in a little bit more of a creative format for you. Maybe you are really a cut and dry kind of writer, and that's the way that you want to tell this story. Whatever that is, that's the way we want to see your essay, and that's how we want to hear about you. Whatever way, shape, or form. Also keeping in mind that this is an essay that you're going to send to every single college, so this is essentially your greeting to these individuals who are on the other side of the desk, who are reading your application. This is your way to say, hi, I'm a person in 3 dimensions. So, hopefully, if you're applying to Notre Dame, hi, Notre Dame, I am this person, and here's how you can see who I am. I like to give the advice that in your personal essay, maybe this is something that you print out on your school's printer, and you leave it there with no name, no address, no nothing on it. Can somebody in your class pick it up and say, oh, I know this is Angela, I know this is Brendan, because they're telling me things about them that I know are core to who they are. So the biggest thing for your personal essays are, this is the chance to really express yourself in an exciting way that lets us know who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Something kind of specific at Notre Dame is that we don't have interviews as part of our admissions process. So certainly do not be offended that we do not reach out to you about an interview. That is not something that we offer as part of our process. So the essays are almost like a written interview. Like that really is your opportunity to tell us, as Angela said, who you are, your story, your personality, so we can get to know you better. Certainly something I hear quite a bit, kind of like actually on the activity section, we were saying, well, what activity is best? I get is, well, what topic is best? What should I write about? Is it this or this? And there's no best topic, for you to write about. It really is about what is going to allow you to best tell your story, express who you are, just as Angela said there. There certainly are some topics that we may see more than others, but some of the best essays I've ever read have been about some of the most common topics because they have done such an amazing job of really being true to who that person was. And I felt like after reading them, I knew just what they were going to be like on our campus, the type of roommate that person was going to be, that really allowed them to, as you said, jump off the page, that I thought was really great to really understand them. So don't get too caught up in trying to think of, again, what kind of topic do we want to read about? Think more about what is going to allow me to best express who I am and my personality, because at the end of the day, that's what we're most interested in. This is really how we get to know you beyond the numbers as a person that I think is so special. I don't want to speak for Angela, but it's probably my favorite part of the application is reading the essays. A little more interesting than looking at the numbers sometimes, so it's pretty fun to get to do that and learn more about you. We look forward to that, honestly, reading that about you.
Absolutely. I think a lot of admissions counselors, I can't speak for us as a whole, but a lot of admissions counselors in general, at whatever college you're going to apply to, do enjoy reading those personal essays. Yeah. And if they have supplemental essays like Notre Dame does, we enjoy reading everything that you're writing to really get to know you in those really meaningful ways.
Yeah. Say one more point before we move on to our closing thoughts here is that do remember that the essay on the application, so on Common Application, Apply Coalition on SCORE, QuestBridge application, that is going to every school you apply to. So do try to avoid talking about specific colleges and why you kind of feel that special connection to Notre Dame or anyone else. If we see Notre Dame, might be nice for us to read, not a lot of fun for other schools to read, and not fun to see others. So save that for elsewhere, perhaps the short answer prompts that we mentioned there, because that will go to everyone that you are using that application to apply to. Well, again, this topic of application advice is one that we could talk about for hours, but we're not going to keep you here for hours, certainly. But we did want to close by just kind of giving, in general, as you are perhaps starting to dive into your application, what is just one big piece of advice that we would give you all? I'll start with you, Angela. Yeah.
Sounds great. Thanks, Brendan. So for me, the biggest piece of advice that I can give is sit with yourself a little bit before you start the application and really sit and think, what is the one thing that I want an admissions counselor to take away from this application? What is the personal qualities that I want to highlight? What is, that crucial piece of who I am that I want them to know? And really be meaningful about how you are displaying that in your application. Maybe it's, for me, I was a 4-H kid, like Brendan mentioned. And so tying that into different parts of my application was really important because that was talking about the leadership that I'd done, the different experiences that I had. So I knew that I wanted to tangle that in at a couple of different places in that application. For you, maybe that's something else. So really sit and think about, not just an activity, but what is that personal bit of you that you want us to see? And be meaningful about how you're putting that into your application.
That's great advice, absolutely. I lost a trivia competition once because I didn't know what the 4-H's from 4-H stood for, so I could have used you on that team at that time. And that's a wonderful piece of advice. I think what I would offer to you as well is that give yourself plenty of time to complete this application. It takes time, really, to complete whichever application you use. This is not something that generally you can kind of knock out in an hour. This is something where you do not want to be turning in your first draft, not only of the essay, but often even in the activity section, like we said, or deciding, where different categories could go there. A college application is not something you want to do the night before it's due, which perhaps you may be a bit accustomed to doing, in your high school. Hopefully not, but maybe so. You really do want to start your work early in the process so you can show it to other people. You can go through revisions, giving yourself plenty of time to do things like getting letters of recommendation. We didn't touch on those, but you don't want to be asking your teacher for a letter of recommendation the next day when you need it. You want to be giving yourself and giving others that will be impacting your application, teachers, counselor, other letter writers, plenty of time in advance as well too. So really think about that. I think especially as well, if you can even start your application potentially over the summer, thinking about your essays, or very early in the school year. So by the time you start having to do all of your academic work for your high school, you have a good bulk of your application done. That can be very helpful as well too. So that would be a piece of advice that I would offer you as well too. Be aware of the deadlines and then work towards them from there.
Absolutely. So we're glad you were able to, sit with us across the camera for a few minutes today and learn a little bit about this application process. At the end of the day, remember that you are choosing the colleges just as much as, we are selecting our students. We really want to make sure that at Notre Dame, we're building this exciting, amazing class of students, and every single college is going to be doing those same things because we want you at our colleges, the beautiful, amazing young individuals that you are. So
absolutely. Best of luck, everyone. Thank you again for spending some time with us today. We appreciate it.